Hello, this is David with Stupid Things People Do and what we can learn from them. Today, we're going to discuss only the best and greatest management styles, by which I mean trapping your employees in a room with a daily morning stand-up routine where you threaten to fire everyone if they don't follow every jot and tittle of policy. Because morale and reasons. Obviously, that's bad. But this Stalinist approach to management really did happen. Meet Chuck Fargo, our intrepid protagonist who had the bad luck of being promoted into exactly this position. It turns out his boss had been taking management tips from Joseph Stalin, using intimidation as the primary way to get things done. One day, Fargo decided enough was enough and stood up for a coworker, intervening in a dispute between said coworker and dear leader. Fargo got himself publicly shamed and called a liar in front of the whole team for his trouble. And that kind of public display of aggression is why I'm alleging that there's a real cultural revolution dynamic to dear leader's management style. Anyway, common tactics shared with dictators usually come in 2s, or 3s, or as many as they feel like. And on a definitely not directly connected occasion, our dear leader called Fargo into his office to ritualistically remove any and all documents and reviews claiming that Fargo had exceeded expectation from Fargo's employee file. The reason? Well, according to dear leader, no one exceeds expectations. Hopefully it's clear now how this smash the proud nail, cut the tall grass approach is garnering communistic comparisons from me. Also, the audacity of it all. Censoring an employee file because it doesn't line up with your expectations of what should be possible for performance? I mean, given the way dear leader was managing his employees, it's no wonder they're not exceptional. But that's more on him than the employees. To that point, Fargo kinda called it out, opining that no other employees had endured similar humiliating and berating treatment from dear leader. Following that meeting, Fargo, of course, escalated up the chain of command, noting that he felt singled out because of both his age and religion. Fargo was a Christian, not a communist. Unfortunately, this wouldn't feature as a stupid thing if anything intelligent happened after that. And it didn't. Later that year, HR called Fargo into their office, terminating him, and asserted he can't talk about his Christian faith under any circumstances at the workplace. The reason? Well, not everyone at the facility was a Christian. I mean, duh, right at the top of the list of un-Christ-like behavior would be dear leader's approach to company culture. Anyway, Fargo got fired, and because this ain't the Red Revolution, we actually do have rights, so Fargo sued. Fargo claimed that he was discriminated against because of both his religion and age, and claimed he was retaliated against for protected activities. Of course, his former workplace, let's call them Soviets Incorporated, tried to have that lawsuit dismissed. But that turned out about as well as anything the Red Revolution has ever tried. Kinda gets partway there, but not really. You see, in order to dismiss something, the court has to accept all well-pleaded facts as true and view them in the light most favorable to the plaintiff. And a complaint must have a statement of pain where the alleged victim, not the legal term, is entitled to relief. And that well-pleaded part is important because the claims actually need to be plausible. So completely nonsensical or spurious claims, like suing someone for not showing up on a date, real thing that happened, are probably going to get dismissed. Back to the subject at hand, being told you're not allowed to talk about your religion while you are actively being terminated does make it seem plausible that the reason for the termination was the aforementioned religion. You know, that thing the HR person brought up when they were telling you were being fired? It would require a special kind of logic to infer that the things specifically brought up during the course of the conversation have nothing to do with that conversation. Now, it's also worth noting that Fargo's age-based discrimination complaints, multiple ADEA complaints, and retaliation complaints all did get dismissed for a number of different reasons that basically add up to, I get why you're saying that's retaliation, but legally it's really not. So what's the takeaway? Well, first, you might want to use trained HR people. Second, what you and I and Fargo would conceive of as obvious violations of ADEA may not technically actually fit together in the way you or I might think they would. If they did, we wouldn't need attorneys. And third, fair rules for the workplace. Where this whole thing really went wrong for Soviets Incorporated was twofold. Fold number one. My gosh, that company culture. Where do you find these walking analogies for Joseph Stalin? How do you give them power? Was no one paying attention? Make treating people as equals in Christ, with or without the religious language, a part of your company culture. If you do, this fear will keep them in line approach to management utilized by our dear leader is going to stand out like ravers at the opera. And this way you can kick them out. Fold number 2. Though you can have some limits in place so that people don't make a nuisance of themselves, you can't really tell someone they can't talk about religion at all at the workplace. If you do, you run the risk of creating exactly these kinds of lawsuits. To make this real, what happens when the atheists can talk about all their beliefs, because it's not religion, but the Christians can't at all? Now, there's a philosophical debate over whether or not atheism technically is a religion. I fall strongly on the side of the debate that it's a belief about God that informs your morals. So duh. But my personal opinions aside, and that is my personal opinion and no one else's, since you can't discriminate against someone for atheistic opinions in the business workplace, it is legally protected like a religion. So it's neither fair, nor very safe, nor very smart to have double standards surrounding religious speech and atheistic speech, particularly because the law doesn't just say that employers must tolerate religion in the same way a Victorian stepmother tolerates her stepchildren. Quiet, out of sight, and with the governess. You have to actually actively accommodate religious beliefs. And it's hard to say that someone's faith is being accommodated if it's under a regime of active censorship. What we want to avoid here is a common trap many people fall into, a rules for thee, but not for me approach to religious value and freedom. I can talk about my beliefs. You can't talk about yours. We see these double standards all over the place, and in more than just religion, they create an implicit those above, those below double standard. And while these aren't necessarily malicious in origin, they are damaging in outcome, and they can easily happen by accident. You do not want your policy to be setting up people to make these mistakes. Accommodations are always a conversation. And having those conversations can actually help you to identify the hardline, intolerant Joseph Stalins of the workplace. And when you hear about Dear Leader during an accommodation request, you can confront that guy before he culturally revolutionizes your workplace. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.